If you are here now, stop for a second before you keep scrolling, because what I am about to say was not made for the majority of people who will see this video pass by. It was made for you, who in the last few weeks have been carrying a strange sensation in your chest without being able to name it, an agitation that appears at night when the house goes silent, a nagging certainty that something is moving beneath the surface of your life, even if everything on the outside seems the same. You did not look for this video out of curiosity. You were led to it at the exact moment you needed to hear that you are not going crazy. You are not just tired, and it is not a coincidence. Between June 19th and 21st, a window opens, and you have already started to feel it before knowing its name. I will not promise that the universe will descend and solve your life. Quite the contrary. I will show you clearly and without romanticizing anything why these 3 days are a real turning point, what exactly will change within you, and what is the only step that separates the souls who pass through this window from those who will let it close. Stay until the end, because the part that matters most, the one that defines which of the two groups you will fall into, is precisely where most people give up watching. Let's start with what this window from June 19th to 21st actually is, because you need to understand the structure before you feel the impact. There is a pattern in nature that few stop to observe. The tide does not ask for permission to rise. The seed does not negotiate with winter to sprout in spring. There are moments in time when conditions align and transformation ceases to be a distant possibility and becomes a present pressure. The window between June 19th and 21st is one of those moments, not because someone marked it on a calendar, but because something in the collective field is reorganizing itself, and those with internal sensitivity perceive this as a current changing direction. You may have noticed in the last few days a different kind of sleep, dreams more vivid, more charged, conversations that popped back into your head out of nowhere, old decisions that suddenly seem wrong, people who disappeared or reappeared without warning. None of this is random. These are signs that the ground is being prepared, and here begins the first separation. The majority of people will feel exactly what you are feeling, but they will give it the wrong name. They will call it stress, overwork, a bad day that turned into a bad week. They will take a sleeping pill, distract their mind with a screen, and let the window pass as if nothing had happened. These people are neither worse nor better. They simply do not have the internal infrastructure to recognize a calling when it arrives disguised as discomfort. You do. The fact that you are still watching when thousands have already given up is the proof of this. You belong to the minority that feels and investigates instead of feeling and anesthetizing. Keep this distinction in mind because it will come back. Now we need to talk about the number that both scares and fascinates, the 144,000 souls. Forget the literal reading. No one is going to count heads. The number 144,000 was never about quantity. It is a symbol, a frequency, a state of readiness. Think of it this way. Within an entire orchestra, only some instruments are tuned to the same note at a given instant. When that note sounds, they resonate together, even while being at different points in the room. The 144,000 souls are those that arrived tuned in at this moment. And how does a soul tune itself? Not by luck. It is by where. It is by everything you did not choose but went through. The unrest that no one saw, the forced pauses when life compelled you to stop, the losses of certainty when that which you swore to be true crumbled, the repeated signs you tried to ignore that came back louder. Each of these experiences was a turn of the tuning key. It hurt, but it left you ready. You are not ready despite what you have suffered. You are ready because of what you have suffered. People who have had lives that were too comfortable, who have never been moved from their place, rarely develop this sensitivity. It is the friction that produces the spark. And if you are recognizing yourself in every word, it is because your attunement has taken place. The question now is no longer whether you are ready. It is what you are going to do with that readiness. And this is exactly where many people get stuck. Because feeling like you are ready and not knowing what to do with it is one of the most agonizing sensations that exist. It is like having a force inside you without having a channel to let it flow. That is why I prepared Magia M28 Exercicios as 28 chaves du despertar for you. It is not a course for you to learn more theory about spirituality, because you already have plenty of theory, and it hasn't moved you from your place. It is a 28-day structure, a complete lunar cycle, designed to transform this restlessness that doesn't let you sleep into language, your shadow into clarity, and the signs you have been receiving into concrete decisions. One key a day, one exercise at a time, so that the window that is opening now does not close with you still standing on the threshold. I have left the access in the first pinned comment down here. It is the first one you see. And if you can feel in your body that this window has already begun to open within you, comment one word, desperto. Not for the sake of the count, but because naming what one feels is the first exercise for those who decide to cross over. Now, with the structure clear, let's go into each of the 3 days because they are not the same. Each date carries a specific pressure. June 19th is the beginning of the intensification. It is when the current that was rising slowly begins to push with force, and the way it pushes is uncomfortable, I won't lie. On the 19th, and the days surrounding it, those doubts you were able to silence during the day become louder. The inner truths you were pushing to the back begin to surface without asking for permission. You may wake up with a heavy heart for no apparent reason. You may feel a sudden urge to cry in the middle of a banal task. You may get irritated by small things because your system is overloaded, processing something much bigger than the situation in front of you. Most will interpret this as a breakdown, as anxiety that needs to be medicated and silenced as quickly as possible. And I understand the impulse. Nobody likes discomfort, but think of a poorly healed fracture that needs to be broken again to set correctly. It hurts more in the moment of reopening, but it is the only way for the bone to become firm. The 19th is that reopening. What seems like fatigue is, in reality, the beginning of an internal reorganization that had been postponed for years. Your mind is trying to deliver a message to you, and the discomfort is just the envelope. Whoever learns to open the envelope instead of throwing it away reads what is written. Whoever throws it away keeps receiving the same letter, more expensive, heavier, month after month. Let me give you a snapshot of what this looks like in real life, because you might recognize yourself. Imagine a person who for years has woken up, had coffee, gone to work, come home, watched something to turn their brain off, and gone to sleep. On the outside, a functional routine. Nobody would say there is anything wrong, but on the inside, there is a quiet little voice that has been repeating for a long time the same phrase, "This isn't it. It isn't this job. It isn't this relationship. It isn't this city. It isn't this life." And this person has learned to drown out the voice with volume. More work, more screen time, more noise, more of anything that prevents the silence where the phrase appears. It worked for years. But then day 19 arrives, the pressure rises, and suddenly the volume is no longer enough. The phrase breaks through. In the middle of a meeting, in the car stopped at a red light, in the grocery store line, the voice says, "This isn't it," with a force that makes it impossible to pretend you didn't hear it. That is the moment. It is not a breakdown. It is the truth finally managing to get through the door you kept closed. So on day 19, I ask you for just one thing. Do not automatically numb yourself. When the discomfort rises, instead of running toward distraction, ask it what it came to say. You will be surprised by the clarity that appears when you stop running. The voice you spent years muffling did not come to destroy you. It came to fetch you. And then we reach day 20, which for many people is the hardest day to face because it stirs the oldest wound of all, self-worth. The energy of day 20 organizes itself around healing, deservingness, money, the body, stability, and self-esteem. And here I need to tell you a truth that will be uncomfortable, but liberating. Many souls believe they are being blocked by destiny, that there is some force out there holding back the abundance, the love, the health, and the peace they want so much. But in the overwhelming majority of cases, it is not destiny that is blocking them. It is an old identity. A version of you that, at some point in life, learned that it was safer to accept little than to risk wanting much and being disappointed. Think of a plant that has spent its whole life growing inside a small pot. The roots have coiled, adapted, and gotten used to the limit. When you finally put it in a larger pot, it hesitates. For a while, it continues to grow in the shape of the old pot, even with all the new space available. You are that plant. your old identity learned to feel safe within limitation. It learned to expect little from love, to settle for a salary that barely covers the bills, to look at your own body with judgment, to think that stability is a luxury for others. And this identity does not sabotage you because it hates you. It sabotages you because it thinks it is protecting you from the danger of wanting. Day 20 is the opportunity to face this identity head-on and realize that it is not you. It is just an old mold, and molds can be broken. I know it's easier said than done, and that breaking a pattern of worthiness you've carried for decades doesn't happen with a pretty reflection in a video. It happens with structured practice, day after day. That is exactly what Magia M28 Exercicios does with self-worth. It gives you the right key on the right day to dismantle that old identity piece by piece. Don't let this window pass you by while you're stuck in the small pot. The access is in the first pinned comment. The decision is quick, but the window is short. Getting back to what is happening inside you. After facing self-worth on day 20, something natural starts to happen before the turn of day 21. Things begin to loosen up. And this is the topic that scares people the most, so pay attention. In the days leading up to the solstice, you may notice that certain certainties lose their strength. That conviction about who you are, about what you want, about the people around you, becomes less solid. Bonds that seemed permanent start to feel fragile. Habits that once gave you comfort suddenly seem empty. Narratives you told about your own life begin to sound false, even to yourself. And the immediate instinct is to panic, to think that you are losing control, that you are destroying your own life, that something is terribly wrong. But listen closely, because this is one of the most important distinctions in this video. What is collapsing is not punishment, it is cleansing. Imagine a house that is about to undergo a deep renovation. Before anything new can be built, the rubble must be removed. The rotting walls must come down. And if someone were to enter the house in the middle of this demolition, unaware of the project, they would think everything was being destroyed. But the demolition worker knows that every wall that falls is making space for something better. Life is doing this to you. It is removing, with a precision that feels cruel, everything that no longer matches the new frequency you are reaching. The relationship that only worked with your smaller version. The job that only served your limited identity. The friendships that only existed when you agreed to be less than you are. Do not hold on to what is leaving just because you have grown accustomed to the weight. Sometimes what looks like loss is just space being cleared, and those who understand this go through the demolition without falling into despair, because they know that the blueprint for the new house already exists. And it is at this point, with the inner house already partially cleared, that we reach the apex, June 21st, the solstice, the sun's entry into Cancer. If the previous days were pressure and demolition, the 21st is the emotional turning point. Astronomically, the June solstice marks a real, measurable transition in the planet's movement. Symbolically, the sun's entry into Cancer shifts energy into the most intimate territory that exists: home, roots, ancestry, deep emotion, protection, belonging. After days of dealing with doubt, value, and loss, the current now carries you inside the house, not the house of bricks, the house that you are. And here is the secret of the 21st, that which separates those who cross over from those who get stuck. The new phase does not begin when you finally understand everything. It begins the instant you stop running from what you feel. You may have spent your whole life learning to treat emotion as an enemy, to swallow your tears, to hide your vulnerability, to turn pain into productivity so you don't have to feel it. The 21st inverts this logic. It invites you to do what seems counterintuitive, and is in fact the most courageous thing: to return to the center, to sit with what hurts, to welcome emotion as a messenger and not as a threat. Because it is only from within this emotional center, finally inhabited, that the next phase can be born. Those who spend the solstice running from themselves only delay the window for the next cycle. Those who stop, feel, and anchor cross through. Think of someone who has spent their entire life running from one room to another within their own house, avoiding one specific room, the one where they stored everything that hurt too much to look at. They keep the door locked, decorate the rest of the house to perfection, receive guests, smile. But every single day they spend an enormous amount of energy simply by not walking past that door. The 21st is an invitation to finally open it. Not to suffer more, but precisely to stop spending an entire lifetime keeping the door locked. Because when you enter the room you were avoiding, you almost always discover the same thing. The monster you imagined inside was just a feeling waiting to be felt. And a felt feeling does not kill you. A repressed feeling, however, that is what consumes you in silence for decades. The sun's entry into Cancer opens that door with delicacy, finally giving you the emotional security to face what was tucked away. And on the other side of that door, surprisingly, there is no more pain. There is space. There is air. There is you whole for the first time in a long time. Before I show you the final step, I need to tell you something about this channel, because it completely changes the value of what you are receiving. Every video I publish here is not an isolated piece. It is a coordinate within a larger map of the whole year, of the windows that open and close throughout the cycles. If you are not subscribed, you will only receive pieces of the map, fragments that on their own make no sense. The next videos show exactly what happens after this window closes, and missing the sequence is losing the entire context of your own journey. So subscribe now before continuing, so you don't end up with an incomplete map precisely at the most decisive part. Now the topic that is perhaps the most important of all, because it dismantles the greatest trap of the spiritual path, the idea that there is a magical timeline waiting for you. You must have heard of a new timeline, and the way most people understand this is precisely what keeps them trapped. They imagine that, by some magic, they will wake up in a different reality, with problems solved, the right people in place, money flowing, without anything actually needing to be done. As if the timeline were a gift that falls from the sky for the chosen ones. I need to dismantle this for you, with great care, because believing in this fantasy is the most sophisticated way to remain stuck. A new timeline is not a magical place where you are teleported. It is the concrete reality that is born when you begin to make different choices from a more honest internal foundation. That is it. It is no less spiritual for being practical. It is more. Think of a portal not as an astronomical event that opens the ground beneath your feet, but as the exact point where the cost of remaining stuck in your current life finally becomes greater than the terror of taking the next step. That is when the portal opens. You take the step first in the dark with no guarantee, and the ground appears afterward. Never before. Whoever waits for the ground to appear before taking the step waits a lifetime. The change does not happen, because the 21st has a magical energy that does the work for you. It happens when you use the energy of the 21st to begin acting according to what, deep down, you already know is true, even while still feeling afraid. Fear is not a sign that you are not ready. Fear is the toll of the crossing. Everyone pays it. The difference is that some pay and pass, and others stay parked at the booth, thinking that one day the toll will vanish. And there is something cruel about this wait that few realize. The longer you remain stopped in the booth, the more expensive the toll becomes. The relationship that could have ended with a difficult conversation turns into years of accumulated resentment. The career change that would cost one courageous decision today turns into a lifetime of what-ifs tomorrow. The price of acting is always lower than the price of delaying, even though delay gives the false impression of being free. It is not. You pay in installments every day in the currency of silent dissatisfaction. The new timeline, then, is not the prize of those who got lucky. It is the paid-in-full invoice of those who had the courage to pay up front. And that is why I need to be direct with you on this point, because this is where the responsibility shifts entirely into your hands. You have already understood the window. You have already understood your readiness. You have already understood what needs to fall and what needs to be born. To know all this and not have a structure to execute is the saddest destiny that exists, that of the awakened person who remains asleep in practice. O major im 28 exercícios. As 28 chaves do despertar is the bridge between everything you felt watching this video and the physical reality of your life truly changing. It is 28 days, one key at a time, so you don't waste the exact window that is opening now, and that won't wait for you to feel comfortable. This is the time for decision, not next week. The access is in the first pinned comment, the first one right below this video. Don't let your own awakening turn into one more thing you put off. And that leads us to the end, to the simplest and at the same time, the most decisive step of this entire crossing. After everything you have heard, you might be expecting some grand instruction, some complex ritual, some secret formula. But the truth is disconcerting in its simplicity. The first step of awakened souls is not to move a mountain. It is to let go of one single thing, to make one single honest choice, to stop negotiating with one single old pattern that you have known for a long time needs to end. It could be a conversation you have been avoiding for months, and that needs to happen. It could be a habit that consumes you and that you pretend not to see. It could be saying no to someone for the first time, or saying yes to something that terrifies you because you want it so much. It doesn't matter the size in the eyes of the world. What matters is that it is true, because it is the first true step that opens the door, not the big step. And here is the final definition, the one you came looking for without knowing it. The 144,000 souls are not those who do not feel fear. They are those who move with the fear still present. They do not wait for courage to arrive, because they understood that courage is a consequence of movement and not its prerequisite. They cross the window with a small, true step, while the crowd stays waiting for a certainty that never comes. The difference between the two groups in the end is not talent, it is not luck, it is not destiny. It is a single step taken in time. So this is my question for you, and I want you to answer now before you leave. What is your small true step? Do not think for an hour. The first thing that came to your mind when I asked the question is the right answer. Write it here in the comments. Comment the step you are going to take within this window, even if it is small, even if it is scary. Putting it into words is the way to take the decision out of the world of ideas and bring it into the physical world, where it begins to truly happen. And one last thing, perhaps the most important of all. Everything you heard today was the preparation. It was the map of the terrain, the reading of the window, the understanding of what is moving. But the revelation of what this all means, in concrete terms, for the life that begins on the other side of this window, is in the next video, the one that appears now on your screen. Click on it. Don't leave it for later, because depoise is exactly where the crowd lets the windows close. The first 60 seconds of that video will change the way you see everything you felt over the last few days. The crossing doesn't end here. It continues at the next coordinate on the map. And you, who made it to the end when so many gave up, have already proven which side of the window you belong on. Now just cross over.